Hey everybody, I'm going to walk you through a few things with the romantic hero. You should have already looked through this document and had a few moments to read some things and kind of get a few ideas about it, but I just want to make sure that you saw a few specific points here. Um, I'm going to talk a little bit about archetypes here, and that should be a term you're already familiar with. If not, it's one you definitely need to be familiar with for AP. And we're going to talk a little bit about the romantic hero. At some point this week, maybe a little bit later, you're going to, we've got a lecture about romanticism and talk a little bit more in detail about that. Um, and I think during that lecture, I said at some point this week you'll have a lecture on romantic hero, so we'll cover kind of everything between the two. This is not my document here, but as I was kind of searching for materials and things, I thought that this one was actually pretty good in explaining what you needed to look at. So we're going to go through this 5 eyes of romanticism. This is one thing that's kind of like, yeah, all these things are true, but I don't think it's necessarily the best way to explain romanticism, but you can look at that if you want to. What I really want to focus on is the idea of a romantic hero. Number one, big ego. Somebody that thinks a lot of themselves, somebody that kind of views themselves as being better than others, is one thing that's characteristic of somebody with a romantic hero. Experiences life fully. This isn't usually like a hermit who doesn't do anything. Most of the time, it's somebody who has some sort of bigger life experience. They've become part of some sort of larger story. Um, Nonconformists, they don't conform to society. That's pretty straightforward. Extraordinary achievements, and they usually die young. So we're going to talk a little bit about how Frankenstein fits into this role, how he fits into the idea of a romantic hero, um, as we go along here. But I want you to look at these next few slides too. Somebody that possesses an understanding of his inner self or inner world. Usually they're pretty contemplative. They think a lot. They're kind of aware of what's going on. He also understands the value of his experiences through emotions, intuition, and feelings rather than logical reasoning. This is a really important thing to think about here. Um, most of the time we value people who think things through and who are logical and who make good decisions, right? That's the sort of thing we would want in a president, for example. We wouldn't want a president to get really mad and just make some quick emotional decision to go bomb some other country. That wouldn't be good. We'd want them to be logical and calculating and think things through. A romantic hero usually acts on their passions, on how they feel, whether or not they're mad, they're angry. Um, so that's a really different thing than maybe what we would characterize with a normal hero. It's not just bravery, it could be fear, it could be anger, it could be a lot of different things. The audience must also be able to emotionally connect with the romantic hero. You all have been angry and frustrated and felt excited before. You all have experienced joy or experienced frustration. Um, and those are the sorts of things we can usually connect with in terms of a romantic hero. Usually, it makes it pretty easy um, to relate. Sophisticated, mysterious, and a bit dangerous. Usually they're sophisticated. It's not just like some person from the woods who's kind of barbaric, but they're usually pretty intelligent. A moody rebel who can be arrogant. Attractive to women who are drawn to his complicated personality, hidden conflicts, and secret past. A lot of times we think of this person as like a brooding, mysterious type of person. One thing I don't like about this is this bullet point excludes all other women. And women can be romantic heroes too, not just men. But either way, they have that kind of mysteriousness to them. Drawn to nature, in the romanticism lecture, we'll talk a whole lot about that. But the romantic hero has some sort of connection or draw to nature, and they reject their standard guidelines for their own kind of morality or justice. And I do like this. They said, think Batman, not Superman. Um, Batman has kind of his own moral code, right? He's going to go beat people to a bloody pulp and terrify them and torture them to get what he wants and to help people. Whereas Superman kind of adheres more to society's rules, right? He's the tagline with him used to be that he was the defender of truth, justice, and the American way. So he kind of very much had this idea that I'm supporting American values. Batman is not like that. Authors of romantic heroes Nathaniel Hawthorne and Herman Melville. We'll probably mention them a few times. You should have read The Scarlet Letter last year. I think most of you did. Um, Hester Prynne could be seen as a romantic hero in that. She is very much rejecting society's ideals. She's kind of isolated herself from society. Um, and she has this mystery about her, right? Who is the father of Pearl? Who is her husband? What's going on? And so she fits into a lot of those categories for a romantic hero. Moby Dick is an unbelievable book. And the romantic hero in that, the romanticism is really interesting to think about. Captain Ahab is this guy who rejects a lot of other whaling techniques. He's driven by anger and madness. It's a very, very emotional sort of leadership. Um, but we wouldn't really argue that he's a good guy, and actually, he's kind of a bad guy. So, one of the reasons a romantic hero is really interesting is it's not as clear cut as a normal hero, right? When you read the Odyssey during your freshman year, um, Odysseus is the hero. He's brave and he leads his men and he fights these monsters, and everybody's kind of like, yeah, he's a hero. Um, Romantic heroes are much harder to pinpoint. They reject society. They don't always listen to other people. They can be kind of arrogant. They can be emotional. All of those things can be good, but they can also be kind of bad, right? With Hester Prynne, for example, you could argue that it might just be better if she just told people what was going on. Captain Ahab ends up getting himself killed because of what he does. Um, and Frankenstein is similar. He fits a lot of qualities of a romantic hero, but he doesn't make a lot of great decisions. Real life romantic heroes, you can look at these. We're not going to talk a whole lot about those. Romantic heroes in literature. We will read Wuthering Heights a little bit later, so we'll talk a little bit more about that. But you might have read Jane Eyre or Sing Gone with the Wind. Just to clarify, we're not talking about romantic love. Hopefully, you all know that romanticism is a literary movement. Um, so there's that. And then I very quickly want to just talk about archetype. An archetype is sort of like a fundamental idea or a fundamental pattern that's repeated in literature. So the idea of a romantic hero can be considered an archetype because it's pretty consistent across literature. But an archetype doesn't just have to be a person, it can be a plot, an idea, a symbol. It can be a whole lot of different things. Um, the sun could be an archetype because the sun in pretty much every culture and every piece of literature represents the same sort of stuff, right? It represents life, warmth, the day, light, those kinds of things. It's pretty much in that category. So romantic here is going to fit in the same sort of category. I do want to emphasize to you, and I mentioned this in the Romanticism lecture, just because a romantic hero is supposed to be emotional doesn't mean they're always going to be emotional. Or just because they're supposed to die young doesn't mean every romantic hero dies young. Hopefully, you know by now that a lot of these archetypes vary slightly from person to person or book to book. So I want to talk quickly about how Frankenstein fits into this category. You're not very far into the book yet, but I do want you to be thinking about a few of these things. Big ego. You'll see in the beginning he's very interested in science and very interested in kind of doing science his own way. He doesn't find a lot of people that support him in that. And eventually, as you guys know, um, he wants to bring about life. Well, that's a pretty arrogant thing for somebody to want to do, to play God, basically. Experience life fully. He does have a lot of great experiences before he creates the monster, so I think he kind of fits in that category. Nonconformist, that kind of goes back to what I was saying with the big ego. He doesn't really follow a lot of what science tells him to do and kind of goes off on his own path. And he definitely has extraordinary achievements, right? He creates this monster. Um, Die Young, we'll talk about a little bit later. Must possess an understanding of his inner self or inner world. I think Frankenstein is pretty reflective. But I want to talk about particularly his emotions and um, his mysteriousness and his sort of code of ethics or whatever. Um, you'll see that Frankenstein as a novel is really, really interesting because we have this guy who's a scientist, and science we think of as being objective and logical, right? You follow this process for the experiment, and then this process, or you have your control group, and all this sorts of stuff. And it's a very set kind of thing. It's very logical progression. Well, Frankenstein's a scientist, but he ends up not really following through on things in a scientific way. Instead, most of this book is driven by his emotion. And in fact, we'll see in the first couple of chapters, a lot of his pursuit of science is very emotional too. He just sort of obsesses over this creation that he wants to do. So even though he's a scientist, he's really pretty driven by emotions. Um, the mysteriousness, we'll see that shortly into the novel, really nobody knows who Frankenstein is. Nobody can really get close to him. Nobody can really get to know him. He's kind of aloof, which fits into this sort of mysterious category. Um, just kind of like Hester Prynne ends up withdrawing from the mainstream of society. Frankenstein does that to a large degree too. And then their own code of morality and justice. Um, I think you'll see pretty quickly in that Frankenstein should come clean with everything. He should talk about what's going on, be honest, go to the authorities, get help. But he doesn't. He kind of tries to handle things in his own way. Even the creation of a monster itself is a very touchy thing. Um, I mean, just think about it. If that were to really happen, you'd have all kinds of new laws. You'd have to talk about whether or not this thing constituted a human. Does it have a soul? Does it have human rights? Can it be a slave? Should it be given its freedom? Um, should it be allowed to have children? Should it be allowed to marry? Should it be allowed to go to other countries? Like, there's all kinds of laws and ideas and rules that would need to be set for something like this. But Frankenstein isn't concerned about all that. He's just concerned about what he can do. So I think Frankenstein as a character really fits into this idea of the romantic hero, and I want you to kind of have a lot of that in the back of your mind as we're going through. And like I said, we'll talk a little bit more about it when we get to Wuthering Heights, this concept, and we'll talk more about Romanticism as we go on. But this whole unit, remember, is about the idea of heroes and villains. Who are the good guys and who are the bad guys? And we're putting that question within the larger context of what does it mean to be human? Frankenstein's a really interesting book for that question. Is Frankenstein, Victor Frankenstein, the character? Is he a hero? I mean, he fits into the romantic hero, but will we identify him as a hero, as a good guy? What about the monster? Is the monster fit into the idea of a romantic hero? He has a lot of these same qualities too. He's mysterious, withdrawn from society. He's drawn to nature. He has his own sense of morality. So who's the good guy there? Who's the bad guy? It's a really interesting question to think about. And like I said, all that's within the larger context of what does it mean to be human? Well, in this book, we have somebody who is human in Victor Frankenstein, and then somebody who is kind of human in the monster. Does that monster have human qualities? What makes him a person? Is he any less of a person than Frankenstein when it comes down to it? All of those things are really, really interesting concepts that I want you to be thinking about while we're going through Frankenstein. If you have any questions about any of that or something just didn't make sense, please feel free to send me an email and I will get back with you as soon as possible. Thanks.